Welcome to the LumiCast, your premier gateway to the universe of limitless photo editing. Dive into the galaxy of Luminar software and the dynamic world of AI photo editing. Join us weekly for a burst of creativity and the drive to transform your photos with confidence and skill. Broadcasting directly from Clever Photographer headquarters, it's time to welcome your hosts, Jakub and Holly Linton.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the third episode of LumiCast. We are back together with Holly and we are here ready to talk to you about photo editing, photography and of course Luminar NEO. Well, you already been with us before, but my name is Jakub. I'm landscape photographer based in West Sussex, England. And on the side of me is the biggest fan of Luminar NEO in North America, Holly Linton. Holly, how are you?
Hi, Jacob. I'm fine, thank you.
Brilliant. So last week we talked about the myths of editing in Luminar NEO. The week before we gave some awards to Luminar NEO tools. And this week we are here to talk about
springtime, spring photography with Luminar NEO and editing.
Awesome. Are you a big fan of spring?
Yeah, I would say so. Fall's really my favorite season, but I'm getting to like spring a little bit more, and trying to be more in the moment and actually watching things happen as far as what is literally springing up around me, everything blooming and things starting to grow and come back to life. So spring is becoming one of my favorite seasons as well.
And I guess we should mention that you quite recently moved more to countryside, or is that right?
Yes, I moved from New Jersey, the Jersey Shore. I moved to Northeast Tennessee. So I live in the mountains of Tennessee, surrounded by all sorts of animals and beautiful scenery.
Great. So spring photography. Well, talking about spring photography, I think it's really exciting. I guess depending which part of the world you're from, but in general, spring obviously does come after the quite long winter, which again, depending what type of photographer you are, but it can be a little bit dull and long and, the weather kind of goes on and off. So there is less opportunities to go out with the camera. So I think we both, just like all the photographers out there, really welcome the spring and its arrival, and we go out more. So in general, I think spring photography is known for nice saturation, new colors, fresh colors, beautiful glow, a beautiful kind of mystical look to it. And you can photograph anything from landscapes and cityscapes, families and animals arriving and all stuff. Now, I am more the landscape guy, but I know that Holly does like to take pictures of animals.
That's right. And now that I have my neighbors are horses and cows and donkeys, I can just walk around the corner with my camera and get them to pose for me.
That's awesome. So what is the last animal you photographed?
A cow, most recently a cow. So I definitely plan to use that in one of my spring edits.
Awesome. Anyway, so those are all the things you can photograph in spring. And that brings us nicely into Luminar NEO, where now we're going to be talking about tools we like to use when we edit spring photos. Holly, how about if you start? What are your favorite tools you use when you're editing your spring photos?
Well, when I look at the pictures I've been editing in the last few weeks, I don't know if you would consider layers being a tool, but I find that I'm typically using layers and adding some fun backgrounds and textures, and then also playing around with color, like you were talking about saturation, because everything I'm taking pictures of is just kind of bursting with color already, like lots of bright yellows and all the colors of the tulips. And so I've been playing around with altering the colors too. There's a picture of a tree that has, I don't know if it's a cherry tree, but it's just all pink petals. And I used the hue, like I altered the hue of I did a linear mask on the top half and did that in one hue, and then did a linear mask on the bottom half with a different hue, and then left the middle section pink, just to kind of almost make it all kind of pastel, or, not Easter egg kind of look, but something just different, just playing around with colors basically. And then I also noticed that my eye has been attracted to a certain shade of blue. So I've been pulling the just the hue of the blue slider almost making a more cyan type of blue rather than like the navy blue that you see typically, your regular sky color. I'm like tweaking the color of the sky. So I find that that's what I've been doing. So pretty much playing with overlays, and also trying to make some fun creations with some of your backgrounds from your spring bundle and your Easter bundle was a lot of fun to work with.
Great. Overlays or layers panel and color tools across Luminar NEO was Holly's tips. I also use color tools. I'm a massive fan of HSL panel, and for that kind of really saturated pictures in a spring, talking about tulips and flowers and trees, I think it's almost necessity to go in and adjust your tones for your greens and for your flowers, and just to be really careful that you don't oversaturate the image, and at the same time just finding really good hue. I guess that's what I'm looking for. So definitely color tool is also one of my favorite. When we're talking about some of my pictures for spring, I already mentioned that I really like to capture images with kind of warm glow, because after the winter, I think when we see the glow, I think it's really warm up people and it creates emotions. And that's something that I like to do with my photos. So there are different ways you can do this in Luminar NEO, but one of my favorite is just to bring in overlay with a nice warm glow, apply it to the image, change the blend mode from normal into the screen and just be really creative with that. I think that works really well. Color tool I already mentioned. Another thing which works very well in spring is to capture like a mystical captures with maybe a little bit of fog or mist in a forest or maybe across the fields in the morning. And if you want to enhance that even further, I think the Atmosphere AI tool is great for that. I think lots of people think that you have to use it just for adding fog because it hasn't been there, but actually you can use it also just to enhance the fog in the image. And I think that can work really well. And I couldn't run my list of tools without mentioning the mystical tool, because there is no edit for Jakub without using the mystical tool. So I like to use that a lot, and spring photography is definitely another category where I use it a lot. Just one more thing which works really well with Easter is also cinematic look. When you have these kind of open scenes, open landscapes or cityscapes or fields, I think creating a little bit of cinematic effect can work really well. And tools I like to use for that is, for example, film grain. I think that's really cool because we all get used to watch maybe like old photos or maybe older movies. And when we see a little bit of that grain, it makes us think of cinematography. So I think that works well. Another really cool tool for that is a matte tool with a little bit of fade. For some reason, the connection between film grain and matte tool works really well. When you kind of crush, you don't have really dark black parts of the image. They are a little bit crushed. I think that can work really well too. And of course, a little bit of toning when you can maybe add a little bit of sepia or something in your photo can work really well too. So that's definitely another way to enhance your spring photos. Well, with that, we have managed to run through the first part of our podcast. So we're going to take a little break. We're going to listen to this ad. And when we come back, we're going to actually talk about the editing techniques we like to use when we edit our spring photos. So don't go anywhere. We speak to you in a minute.
If you're listening to the LumiCast podcast, then we share something in common. We love editing photos, and we love Luminar. It's almost breathtaking what this amazing tech can do for you. On our website, you'll find countless different things to help you be more creative than you ever thought imaginable. From our photo manipulation masterclass to our power bundle with 986 elements, our essential preset bundle, editing software and extensions to our tutorials. Harness the power at the website at www.cleverphotographer.com/Luminar. Again, that's cleverphotographer.com/Luminar. Now, back to LumiCast.
And we are back with the second part of our podcast, where we're still talking about spring photography. We have already gone through our favorite tools, and now we're going to talk about the creative process when it comes to photography and photo editing of our spring captures. So I will go first on this one, talking about what I'm thinking when I'm editing my spring captures. So I already mentioned that I'm a big fan of landscape photography. I also photograph cityscapes and seascapes, but somehow during the spring, I really like to go out to forests and fields and mountains and hills and photograph that. So I capture my landscape images. Generally, I try to skip to golden hour time. So that's my way of capturing it. And then when I come back home and when I edit it, I look at the picture, and what I'm looking for is maybe a little bit of drama and saturation. I really like my images to create emotions. And that can be often easily done with my spring captures by looking for bold colors, also controlling the lights, and just be really creative with it. So, of course, we always do the basic development and all that stuff. But then when it comes to the actual editing, if the sky is maybe a little bit dull or not working, spring is often the season when I go for sky replacement. I think that can make a big difference. Another thing, as I mentioned earlier, I like to enhance my sun or the light. That can be done through different tools in Luminar NEO, like your sun rays or maybe even the magic light, or really easily by using simple glow overlay, just placing it in an image, getting the nice glow. I think that can work really well too. And then when I kind of bring everything together and blend it together, as I mentioned already, I'm looking for that cinematic look. Now, first, I always adjust my colors. I use HSL panel in color tool all the time. And in the spring, I'm even more careful, making sure that everything looks as realistic as possible. So I adjust that. And then I go through my mystical tool, adding a little bit of warmth and glow. I do use the film grain and fade using the matte tool just to add a little bit of that. And finally, when I'm finished, in general, I take a few minutes away because I have a probably quite common problem. When I look at the image for too long, I stop seeing things or I start to over-process the images. So I go for coffee or just maybe look at the garden and I come back and have a look at it. And that's when I do the final part of the editing, like vignette or maybe just a little bit of dodge and burn. Just these kind of important and powerful edits, but more subtle, just to kind of make sure that everything works out together. So that's my way of doing it. And now we're going to listen to Holly and how she goes through her creative process.
It's hard to describe the method to my madness.
You should try.
With regards to the edits I've done in the last few weeks, I will say that I've chosen to take spring also as a time of seeing what lenses I have in my closet, in my camera drawer, that I haven't used in a while, kind of refamiliarize yourself with all your gear. So I had a few lenses from Santa that I hadn't even opened yet, a few Lensbaby lenses, which not everybody might be familiar with. They're really just creative art lenses, and they're all manual, and they all have all sorts of effects built in. So you were talking earlier about glow and mystical and stuff. My vision is, by using those lenses, is already got the glow and it's almost like a blur. They have a center of focus and everything blurs around it depending which lens you're using. So I guess my creative vision already is leaning towards that ethereal type of look for springtime photography.
If somebody would want to find out more about the lenses, like what would be the brand or type, or where could they find out more about them?
Lensbaby.com.
Oh, that's the actual name.
Yes, the actual name, Lensbaby. And then I did a presentation on it once and I said, it's not a lens shaped like a baby. So we could talk about that at another session. I have a lot of knowledge about it just because I own pretty much every one that they have. And so anyway, light flares are part of it too. They have a system of different, they're called Omni wands, and it's all different crystals that you attach to your lens. And so I have a lot of rainbow flares and light leaks. You can create your own kind of, it's like built-in overlays, basically. So I don't know if you would call that my thought process, but that's just what, it's like all the magic is kind of already built in. So my thought process is that I don't have much to do when I'm editing using these lenses. So it is just more the basic adjustments, and just like I'll find I'm just doing a few simple edits to it, and then I'm sitting there like, what else can I do to this? Well, there's nothing else I can do. It already looks great. So that's that part of it. It already kind of has a beauty of its own built right in. But then I've been using textures and some of your backgrounds. So you should, if you've bought assets from somebody like Clever Photographer, look through them and use that as a way of, like, that's my project for today. I am using, pick a background out of the collection. So, for example, I picked a field of flowers that was in your Easter bundle. And then I say, what could I put in this? What pictures do I already have? Ooh, I could put a cow in that field and try to make that look realistic, or even just have fun with some of it. Let other people's assets spark your imagination. So like thought process is just, I don't know if it comes more natural to some people, like to be creative or do something out of the ordinary. So I guess that's kind of what I covered. Now there's one other thing that I could mention. I don't know if this is part of a creative process per se, but I just recently got this thing called Bird Buddy. It's a bird feeder that has a camera built in. So I can now edit pictures that camera's taken. And I can also look at the app on my phone and do a live shoot and get pictures of birds that way.
That's a great idea. This is like a spring wildlife tip almost that you can do. I actually had a student, and this is maybe like 2-3 years, who had a similar thing, but it wasn't for birds. He was basically taking pictures of squirrels or chipmunks. And it was a similar idea. And I thought it was super cute. No, that's a great tip. And I love your creative process. And I think you're 100% right. Sometimes we almost have to give ourselves like a task or homework, or I don't know how you would call it, but you have to kind of push yourself a little bit, because otherwise we just keep doing the same thing over and over, and we stick only with what we're comfortable with, I think. If it doesn't come to you naturally, another great way is to just watch tutorials, watch other people work. I think going to photographic galleries is a great way to get inspired, and just keep an eye open around for other photographers. That can be done across the different channels we can use as a photographer. So that's a great tip. So I love all these tips. The Bird Buddy sounds great. Baby lenses is my favorite. I need to totally check that, because that sounds like a lot of fun. Out of curiosity, is it a lot of fun? Out of curiosity, is it expensive? Are they quite expensive or?
No. One of my favorite ones I got for $115 when it was on sale. But they're pretty much, the most expensive lens is probably only about $400 because they are manual. So that keeps the cost down. But because they're manual, it forces you to kind of slow down and, use manual exposure. The electronic components of your camera will not work with it. It's so fun. It's a whole world of creativity. I'm a big cheerleader for Lensbaby.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I think you're right. I think we need to do an episode about it, actually. I think that will be a lot of fun. And that brings us nicely to the next part, where we're going to talk about things you should be wary of or you shouldn't do with your spring photos, or things that can go wrong. So from my side, probably the biggest thing I notice over and over, and I can see it now when I open Facebook and Instagram, when I see other photographers' feeds, I see it just all the time. And that's oversaturation. It's really dangerous, especially at this time of the year, because the greens, the yellows, the blue skies, they can really come across super powerful. And if you're not careful, it just makes the image look like almost like a video game, or like a very, very kind of AI processed image. So you want to be careful with that. Obviously, there are different ways around it. You just need to be a little bit more gentle when you do your basic development, your highlights, shadow, you need to be careful there. But more importantly, you can, of course, adjust it using the global saturation slider and vibrance slider. And the way I do this, I actually take the saturation slider. This is like my technique for students. You take the saturation slider and you bring it all the way down to -100 or whatever zero is there, to basically end up with black and white photo. So there are no colors at all. And then you keep your mouse on that slider, but you don't look at the slider, you look at the image and start to increase the slider up. So towards the zero mark, to where it's time to get color. And you go up, you don't look at the number, you don't look at the slider, you just look at the image, and you let go at the moment when you like the result. And you will be surprised how many times people let go in like -19, -20, -25 on saturation. And they look at it and thinking, oh, how is it possible? And the reason is here that we as humans and photographers and artists, we are fixated on numbers or on the amount of the slider. So when we look at it, and if I tell you, put on your saturation -25, you would be like, no, it will lose all the colors. Where when you don't look at the slider number, you look at the image, you will be able to dial the -25. So this is my little trick. So it's a saturation. That's definitely one thing to look out for. And another thing which comes in connection with the colors is the white balance. Often, when the camera sensor will see an image where there is a lot of dominant color, like green or blue, it will actually start to take this color and apply it to other areas of the photo. So if you have an image, landscape, where there is lots of pure blue sky, rest of the image will start to get a blue tint. And similar, when you have an image with lots of bright green, it will then take the green and start to apply it to every other parts of the photo as well. Sky, rocks, mountains, houses, and everything. And actually, there is very easy way around it, and that's just the two white balance sliders. So if you have too much blue, you just take the warmth slider and bring it up towards the warmth. That will remove the tint. And if you have too much green, you will take the tint slider, and rather than going into the green, you will bring it up towards the tint. And that will solve half of the misery for you. There is also a slider in Luminar NEO in the color section called Remove Color Cast. And I like to use it, but sometimes it's a little bit of hit and miss because it works on some images and not on the others. But if the white balance didn't do a great job, try the Remove Color Cast slider in a color tool because that can also help with the white balance problem. So from my side, oversaturation, one thing to look out for, and also white balance, especially the blues and greens leaking across the image. And now we're going to find out what about Holly, what she thinks you should avoid in spring photography.
All right. Well, I agree with everything you just said. And then just based on my own experience, since spring has sprung, would be take advantage of, if you have, in this part of the world, we have daylight saving time. So now it's a lot brighter. You could be out shooting, till almost 8 o'clock at night. So you have the advantage of shooting at the golden hour or the blue hour. So I'd say, maybe paying attention to the times of day that you're shooting. However, in the case of certain, like I went to a tulip field, it closes at 5 o'clock. And you have to get a time ticket. So I got it for 1 o'clock and I was walking around and it's super bright. And then it was also very windy. I didn't have a tripod with me. Think outside the box. Well, what can I do to make this a successful shoot? I just ended up putting my camera on multiple exposures and just having fun trying to create something kind of artistic. And so take advantage of, just because it's super windy or maybe it's starting to rain or something, doesn't mean that you can't take pictures. And then I would also say, if you're doing composites and having fun with some of these bundles and different collections, to make sure that you're color matching everything. And if you add, an overlay, make sure, or if you're adding a cow into a picture, make sure it has the proper shadows. I'm still learning that technique, making sure that the light is matching up. If the direction of the sun is going one way, but the light on the object is a different way, make sure you fix all that. So those would maybe be some mistakes if you're doing composites this spring. I guess that's really about it.
Okay, on that note, I think that brings us nicely towards the end of our episode where we talk about spring photography. So we talk about our favorite tools, we covered our thought processes and creative thinking when it comes to photo editing. We also talk about some of the don'ts in editing spring photos, which I think was a lot of fun. Now we're going to be back again next week where we're going to be talking about common editing mistakes and how to avoid them. So actually talking about saturation, talking about over-sharpening, white balance. I think lots of these points will be there and we will go even deeper in trying to help you to avoid them. And if they are there, how to fix them. So that should be lots of fun. Now, for today, thank you very much for joining us again. It was a lot of fun. If you can, definitely give us a follow on your favorite platform. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like and leave us a comment under the video. If you have any tips on the future episodes, we would love to hear them. And for today, that's me. Thank you very much. And Holly.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Have a good afternoon, night, day. We'll speak to you again next week.
And that's a wrap. Now, there's only 3 things left to do. Subscribe to this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Visit our website at cleverphotographer.com/LumiCast to see what we have in store next. And stay creative and keep editing your photos no matter what anyone says.